bomb was found in my classroom and I became a hero that day. Hello, dear friends. I'm Mr. Stevens. I've been teaching high school social studies for 18 years, and today I need to share with you the most terrifying and life-changing day of my entire career. This is a story about split-second decisions, about protecting the children in your care, and about how an ordinary Wednesday morning became a fight for survival that I'll never forget. What I'm about to tell you happened just 2 years ago, but it feels like yesterday. It's a story that will make you appreciate the unexpected dangers teachers face and the lengths we'll go to protect our students, even when it means putting our own lives at risk. It was October 12th, 2022, and I was teaching my third period American history class at Roosevelt High School in Phoenix, Arizona. It was a beautiful fall morning, the kind of day when teaching felt effortless, and the students seemed genuinely engaged with our lesson about World War II and the home front during wartime. I had 28, 14, and 15-year-olds in my classroom that day, a mix of sophomores who represented the full spectrum of teenage personalities. There were the overachievers sitting in the front row, the class clowns trying to make their friends laugh, the quiet observers taking everything in, and the few students who were clearly wishing they were anywhere but in a history classroom. Among my students was Jake Morrison, a lanky 14-year-old with dirty blonde hair and nervous energy that seemed to follow him everywhere. Jake wasn't a troublemaker in the traditional sense, but he often seemed anxious and distracted, as if he was dealing with problems that went far beyond typical teenage concerns. Jake lived with his mother and stepfather in a modest neighborhood about 20 minutes from school. His biological father had died in military service when Jake was 8, and his mother had remarried 2 years later to Rick Morrison, a former Army explosives specialist who struggled with PTSD and had difficulty maintaining steady employment. I knew some of these details from Jake's guidance counselor, who had briefed all of his teachers about the family situation and asked us to be patient with Jake's occasional mood swings and academic inconsistencies. Jake was a bright kid when he was focused, but he often seemed preoccupied with worries that were far too heavy for someone his age. That Wednesday morning, we were discussing the Manhattan Project and the development of atomic weapons during World War II. The irony of what would happen later that day wasn't lost on me when I reflected back on our lesson topic. About 20 minutes into class, I noticed that Jake seemed more agitated than usual. He was fidgeting with his backpack, unzipping and rezipping pockets, and checking his phone repeatedly despite my classroom policy against phone use during lessons. "Jake," I said gently, "is everything okay? You seem distracted today." "I'm fine, Mr. Stevens." Jake replied quickly, but his voice was strained and he wouldn't make eye contact. "Just looking for my notes." I continued with the lesson, but I kept an eye on Jake, who seemed to be getting more anxious by the minute. He was sweating despite the comfortable temperature in the classroom, and his hands were visibly shaking as he continued to rummage through his backpack. About 10 minutes later, I heard a sound that made my blood run cold. Old faint but distinct electronic beeping coming from Jake's direction. It was rhythmic, like a timer or alarm, and it was getting slightly faster. "Jake," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "What's that sound?" Jake's face went completely white. He quickly zipped his backpack shut and pulled it closer to his chest. "Nothing, Mr. Stevens. Just my phone alarm. I'll turn it off." But the beeping continued, and I could see panic growing in Jake's eyes. The other students were starting to notice the sound too, turning in their seats to see where it was coming from. "Jake, I need you to show me what's in your backpack," I said, moving slowly toward his desk. Every instinct I had was telling me that something was very wrong. "No," Jake said loudly, causing the entire class to stop what they were doing and stare. "Please, Mr. Stevens, don't make me open it. You don't understand." The beeping was getting faster now, and more students were becoming aware that something unusual was happening. I could see confusion and the beginning of concern on their faces. "Jake," I said as calmly as I could manage, "I need you to trust me. Whatever's going on, we can figure it out together. But I need to know what's making that sound." Jake started crying then, not the typical tears of an embarrassed teenager, but the deep, terrified sobs of someone who knows they're in serious danger. "Mr. Stevens," he whispered, "I think I'm going to die, and I think I might kill everyone else too." Those words sent a chill down my spine that I'll never forget. In that moment, I realized we weren't dealing with a typical classroom disruption or teenage drama. This was something potentially catastrophic. "Everyone," I said in my most authoritative teacher voice, "I need you all to move calmly to the back of the classroom and sit against the wall. Do it quietly and quickly." My students, trained by years of lockdown drills and emergency procedures, responded immediately. They could sense the seriousness in my voice and moved to the back of the room without question or complaint. I approached Jake's desk slowly, my heart pounding so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. "Jake, I need you to tell me exactly what's in your backpack." My stepdad, Jake, sobbed. "He makes things, explosive things. He's been acting weird lately, talking about the government and conspiracies. This morning I grabbed the wrong backpack. I thought it was mine, but when I got to school and opened it, there was a device." "What kind of device, Jake?" "A bomb, Mr. Stevens. My stepdad builds bombs in our garage. He says it's for protection, but I know it's not normal. And this one, it's counting down. The numbers keep getting smaller." I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. There was an active explosive device in my classroom, with 28 teenagers sitting 20 feet away. "How much time is left on the counter?" I asked, surprised by how steady my voice sounded despite the terror I was feeling. Jake carefully unzipped his backpack just enough to peek inside. 7 minutes and 32 seconds, he whispered. 7.5 minutes to evacuate my students and deal with a bomb. I had to make decisions faster than I'd ever made them in my life. "Jake, listen to me very carefully," I said. "You are not going to die today. None of us are going to die today, but I need you to do exactly what I tell you, okay?" Jake nodded, tears still streaming down his face. I turned to my class, who were watching this interaction with growing alarm. They couldn't hear what Jake and I were saying, but they could see his distress and my obvious concern. "Class," I announced, in the calmest voice I could manage, "we're going to practice our emergency evacuation procedure. I need everyone to line up at the door in single file, just like we've practiced." "Is this a drill, Mr. Stevens?" asked Sarah, one of my most perceptive students. "No, this is not a drill, but I need everyone to follow emergency procedures exactly as we've practiced them. Move quickly, but don't run. Don't talk, and follow my instructions completely." As my students lined up, I could see questions and worry in their eyes, but they trusted me enough to follow my directions without argument. I turned back to Jake. "I need you to very carefully place your backpack on your desk and step away from it. Don't shake it, don't jostle it, just set it down gently." "What if it goes off?" Jake asked. "It's not going to go off, but even if something happens, the most important thing is getting everyone else to safety." Jake carefully placed his backpack on his desk, and I could see his hands shaking with fear and adrenaline. I pulled out my phone and called the main office while shepherding my students toward the door. "Mrs. Patterson," I said when the secretary answered. "This is Mr. Stevens in room 237. I need you to call 911 immediately and tell them we have a suspected explosive device in my classroom. I'm evacuating my students now." I could hear Mrs. Patterson's sharp intake of breath. "Mr. Stevens, are you serious?" "Dead serious. Call 911 now, evacuate the building, and make sure the bomb squad is on their way." As I hung up, I began moving my students out of the classroom. "Everyone walk quickly to the main exit, go directly to the parking lot, and wait by the flagpole. Do not stop at your lockers, do not look for friends in other classes. Just go straight outside." My students filed out of the classroom with remarkable composure, though I could see fear and confusion on their faces. As the last student reached the door, I turned back to Jake, who was standing frozen beside his desk. "Jake, come with me. We're leaving now." "What about the bomb? What if it hurts other people?" "The bomb squad will handle it. Our job right now is to get to safety." But Jake shook his head. "Mr. Stevens, I can't leave it. This is my fault. My family's fault. I can't let other people get hurt because of something my stepdad made." I looked at the backpack on Jake's desk, then at the classroom door where my students were waiting in the hallway. I had seconds to make a decision that could affect dozens of lives. "Jake, how much time is left?" He looked at the device through the unzipped bag. 5 minutes and 18 seconds. 5 minutes. The bomb squad would never make it in time. The building evacuation would take at least 10 minutes to complete. If this device was as powerful as Jake seemed to think, people could be hurt even from a distance. I made a decision that went against every safety protocol I'd ever learned. Jake, I need you to go with the other students. Get outside and make sure everyone stays far away from the building. What about you? I'm going to stay here and make sure this device doesn't hurt anyone. Mr. Stevens, you could die. Jake, that's my job. My job is to protect my students, and sometimes that means taking risks. Now go. Jake ran toward the door, and I was alone in my classroom with a bomb that had less than 5 minutes left on its timer. I carefully approached the backpack and looked inside. The device was about the size of a lunchbox, with wires, batteries, and what looked like plastic explosive material. A digital display showed 4:42 and counting down. I called 911 directly from my cell phone. 911. What's your emergency? This is Mr. Stevens at Roosevelt High School. I have an active explosive device in my classroom, with less than 5 minutes on the timer. I need the bomb squad here immediately. Sir, you need to evacuate the area immediately. I can't evacuate. If this device goes off, it could hurt students who are still in the building. I need to know how to disarm it, or how to minimize the damage. Sir, do not attempt to disarm the device. Leave the area immediately. I'm not leaving, I said firmly. If you can get a bomb technician on the phone, maybe they can walk me through something. Otherwise, I'm going to have to figure this out myself. I could hear frantic conversation in the background, and then a new voice came on the line. Mr. Stevens, this is Sergeant Martinez with the Phoenix Police Bomb Squad. I need you to describe exactly what you're seeing. I described the device in as much detail as I could while watching the timer count down. 3:28, 3:27, 3:26. Mr. Stevens, based on what you're describing, this sounds like a pipe bomb with a digital timer. The good news is that these are typically not sophisticated devices. The bad news is that I can't walk you through disarming it safely over the phone. What are my options? Your best option is to get as far away as possible. Your second option is to try to contain the blast if you absolutely cannot leave the area. How do I contain it? Is there a way you can surround the device with something heavy and dense? Textbooks, desks, anything that might absorb some of the explosive force? I looked around my classroom. I had about 2 minutes left. I have desks and a large bookshelf full of textbooks. Try to create a barrier around the device using the heaviest materials you have. It won't stop the explosion, but it might direct the force upward instead of outward. I started moving desks around the bomb, creating a square barrier. Then I began stacking textbooks on top of the desks, creating as much mass as possible around the device. 145, 144, 143. My hands were shaking, but I kept working. I could hear sirens outside, but I knew they wouldn't make it in time. Mr. Stevens, came Sergeant Martinez's voice through my phone. How much time is left? About a minute and a half. You need to get behind the most solid structure you can find and get as low as possible. Try to put as much distance and mass between you and the device as you can. I had created a makeshift bunker around the bomb using 6 desks and about 50 textbooks. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. 1:15, 1:14, 1:13. I moved to the far corner of my classroom and crouched behind my teacher's desk, which was solid wood and felt like the most substantial piece of furniture in the room. Sergeant Martinez, I'm in position. Less than a minute left. Mr. Stevens, you're doing everything you can. Whatever happens, you've given everyone else the best chance possible. 45 seconds, 44 seconds, 43 seconds. I thought about my students, who were hopefully safe in the parking lot. I thought about my wife and 2 young children at home. I thought about Jake and the impossible situation his family had put him in. 20 seconds, 19 seconds, 18 seconds. I closed my eyes and braced myself for an explosion that might be the last thing I ever experienced. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Nothing. The timer reached 0 and nothing happened. I waited another 30 seconds. then carefully looked around my desk toward the bomb. Why the digital display was now showing 0 o'clock, but there had been no explosion. Liefel der D. Lat. 1 des. Sergeant Martinez, I said into my phone. The timer reached 0, but there was no explosion. Do not approach the device, he said urgently. Sometimes these devices have secondary triggers or backup timers. Stay exactly where you are. About 2 minutes later, I heard heavy footsteps in the hallway, and 3 members of the bomb squad entered my classroom in full protective gear. Mr. Stevens, one of them called out, "We're going to get you out of here, and then we'll deal with the device." They escorted me out of the building, and I was reunited with my students in the parking lot. The relief on their faces when they saw me was overwhelming, and several of them started crying. Jake ran up to me immediately. "Mr. Stevens, are you okay? Did it explode? I was so scared you were going to die because of my family's problems." "I'm fine, Jake. We're all fine, and this is not your fault." About an hour later, Sergeant Martinez found me in the parking lot to update me on the situation. "Mr. Stevens, we've examined the device. It was indeed a functional pipe bomb, but it had a manufacturing defect that prevented the detonator from firing. If it had been built correctly, it would have caused significant damage and likely injuries or deaths." He paused, looking at me with what seemed like a mixture of respect and disbelief. "What you did in there was incredibly brave and incredibly dangerous. Your improvised containment barrier probably would have saved lives if the device had detonated. You put yourself at risk to protect your students and potentially other people in the building." The investigation that followed revealed that Jake's stepfather had been building explosive devices in his garage as part of some paranoid conspiracy theories about government overreach. He was arrested and charged with multiple felonies related to explosive devices and endangering minors. Jake was placed in protective custody with his maternal grandmother, while his mother worked through her own legal and personal issues related to her husband's activities. The most difficult part of the aftermath was helping my students process what had happened. Many of them had nightmares, anxiety about returning to school, and questions about how such a thing could happen in their classroom. We spent several days debriefing with counselors, talking through the experience, and addressing their fears and concerns. I was amazed by their resilience and their ability to support each other through such a traumatic event. Jake struggled the most with guilt and shame about his role in bringing the device to school. Even though everyone assured him that he was a victim of his stepfather's dangerous behavior, he blamed himself for putting his classmates at risk. "Mr. Stevens," he said during one of our counseling sessions, "I could have killed everyone. My whole family is messed up, and I almost got all my friends killed because of it. Jake, you didn't choose to bring that device to school. You were put in an impossible situation by an adult who should have been protecting you instead of endangering you. And when you realized what was happening, you told me the truth, which gave me the information I needed to keep everyone safe." Over the following months, Jake made remarkable progress with counseling and support from his grandmother and the school community. He became an advocate for recognizing the warning signs of domestic terrorism and for supporting children who are affected by adults' dangerous behavior. The media attention that followed the incident was overwhelming. I was called a hero by local news stations, received commendations from the police department and the school district, and was even invited to speak at conferences about emergency preparedness in schools. But I've never felt comfortable with the hero label. I was just doing my job, protecting my students. Any teacher would have done the same thing in that situation. What I learned from that terrifying day is that teaching involves risks. We never anticipate when we choose this profession. We sign up to educate children, but we also become their protectors, their advocates, and sometimes the adults who stand between them and danger. I also learned about the incredible strength and resilience of teenagers. My students handled that crisis with more maturity and composure than many adults would have shown. They followed instructions without panic, supported each other through the trauma, and returned to our classroom with determination to continue learning, despite what they had experienced. Jake graduated high school 2 years later and is now studying social work in college. He wants to work with children who are dealing with family trauma and dangerous home situations. He still keeps in touch with me, and he credits our classroom experience with teaching him that trusted adults will risk their own safety to protect children who need help. But Jay is too. Mr. Stevens, he told me at his graduation. You showed me that day that some adults can be counted on, no matter what. That's the kind of adult I want to be for other kids who are dealing with what I dealt with. Looking back on that October morning, I'm struck by how quickly an ordinary day can become extraordinary, how a routine lesson can turn into a life or death situation, and how the relationships we build with our students can motivate us to make decisions we never thought we'd have to make. I never wanted to be called a hero. I just wanted to be a good teacher, but I learned that sometimes being a good teacher means being willing to put yourself at risk for the children in your care. The bomb in my classroom didn't explode, but the experience exploded my understanding of what teaching really means. It's not just about lesson plans and test scores. It's about being the adult who stands between children and danger, who makes split-second decisions to protect young lives, and who shows students that they are worth protecting no matter what. That's not heroism. That's just teaching. And I'm proud to be part of a profession that produces people willing to make such sacrifices for the children they serve. Oh, me worry. Every day when I walk into my classroom now, I'm reminded that we never know what challenges we might face or what we might be called upon to do for our students. But I also know that whatever happens, I'll do whatever it takes to keep them safe. Because that's what teachers do. We protect the children in our care, no matter what the cost.